Redditors who rage quit a job without thinking. What was the last straw? My insufferable asshole manager followed me after work to my second job because she didn't believe I had one and was just using it as an excuse to get out early. My manager at my second job said there's some crazy lady banging on the doors yelling your name. So I grabbed my uniform from my bag, opened the door, threw it in her face, and told her to frick off. Call center. Inbound sales. They told me I needed to have higher sales numbers and gave me training materials / tools to help. It suggested that if the customer wanted only one service we offered, that I add on other services after the call had ended and hope the customer didn't notice. I questioned this and they said that is how Dave has the highest sales for the past 6 months and I should follow his example. Yee. No. It was a Wednesday. I got a call from my mom when I was at work to tell me that my dad took a turn for the worse and maybe had a day or two left to live. I immediately went to the company owner, small business, and told her the situation and I really needed to leave right away since he lived a few hundred miles away. She told me she understood, but since I was working on some important projects, I should just come in on Saturday since he should be dead by then. I said okay, turned around, walked to my desk, deleted all my personal files from the computer, left my badge and keys on my keyboard, and walked out. Dad passed on Friday, and I turned off my phone that night until the following Wednesday or Thursday while I spent time with my family. I already hated the job and the owner for other reasons and found a new job a few weeks later, so I can't say I regret anything. So, the building my job was in closed down at 9 PM. Everybody except security had to get out so they could shut everything down. One of my supervisors, I had 8 of them, yes it was like office space, kept scheduling me until 9:30 PM. I repeatedly brought this up at the end of the night and was always told no, that's just a mistake, you need to leave. Fast forward 3 months, I get called into a disciplinary meeting. The reason? I kept leaving early. I had like 8 attendance points from leaving early because one of my idiot bosses, who worked in the same building and definitely should have known when it closes, couldn't figure out how to schedule. I explained my side, which is pretty freaking obvious, and they say they'll hold off on any disciplinary action while they look into it. A couple days later they told me they weren't going to remove those attendance points. I told them to shove it up their ass, walked out, and went to a concert with some of my, now former, coworkers. My boss came back from his 30th smoke break that shift, saw me taking a breather after I cleaned the entire kitchen on my own, and told me to stop being so unproductive. Frick you, Matt. I was working at a local bike shop at the time and had a minor-ish surgery. The shop called me and told me I needed to come in because another mechanic called in sick. They were aware of my surgery and just didn't care. I quit during that phone conversation. Boss not doing payroll before leaving on a business trip and leaving it to the poor office manager to tell people they weren't gonna get paid on time. I walked out of the staff meeting saying I'd be back when paychecks arrived. By the time I got home I was mad enough to call my ops manager back and quit. Why didn't the boss do payroll? Stated answer was printer toner cartridge at home was empty. Guess he never heard of writing checks with a pen. I started work in a bar in town and was told to be at work at 7 PM for my first shift with the manager providing me with a typed timesheet showing my new working hours. Went home and had a cat nap. At 5 PM my new manager calls me asking where the hell I am and telling me I need to come in now. I referred him to my timesheet which stated I was to be in at 7 PM. To which he told me the timesheet doesn't thing matter. You do what I tell you. Hearing this I politely told him that I would not be in tonight or ever. Good night and went back to my cat nap. I worked for a restaurant for 2 weeks that refused to teach me anything but berated me regularly for not knowing how to do anything. One day, at the daily pre-meal meeting, my boss told me that you are complete and total crap and you'll always be crap. I waited until they got busy that night, then went the frick home and never came back. I sold cars from 2011, 2013. I was pretty damn good at my job. Had 6 different 20+ car months and averaged 17 cars a month. I attributed to the fact that I truly took care of the customer and knew my crap. I never pitched a vehicle that wouldn't suit their wants and needs. Always fought for a deal that was fair to them and the dealership was courteous of their time, etc. The thing that really made me stand out was that devoted a lot of time into product knowledge. No one in my dealership knew the cars like me. Specifically, no one knew the features and how to operate it. My customer surveys were almost always perfect. A big factor in that is that I spent as long as it took after they picked up the car to show them how all the tech features in the car worked. I got their phone paired, set up their navigation, door and seat settings, everything. My dealership took notice of this around the same time as the industry did. At the time, not many salespeople really cared about post-delivery customer service. I always knew that's what would bring a customer back to buy another car, or at least give me a referral. My dealership figured that out too, so they started something called the Technology Clinic that would be held every other Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. I was volunteered by my sales manager. I would not be paid for it, even though my job was to sell cars. That's how I made money, being the young company guy that I was, and being someone who truly believes in giving the highest quality customer service possible. I begrudgingly agreed. Not that my agreement mattered. Here's the thing about the car business. Saturday is the busiest day of the week. I always sold at least one car on Saturdays, and would often sell as many as 3, just off of fresh customers. Granted, I worked at a huge dealership. This clinic would often take up my entire morning, so I was missing out on a crapload of customers. Over time I came to realize that the other salespeople were turning and burning their customers as soon as the deal was done. They wouldn't go over the car's features per the customer's request. Instead they would tell them about this nice little technology clinic we had. So basically, I would spend my entire Saturday doing other people's jobs for customers that were not mine, on deals I didn't get paid on, during a clinic that I wasn't being compensated for. On top of that, this clinic was supposed to be more in-depth knowledge on the features, not basic crap that should be done at the time the car was sold. So after 2 months of doing this clinic, having no support from managers to get people to do their freaking jobs instead of pawning it off on me, I walked into the clinic and hit my breaking point. 35 customers were there that day, when the clinic was supposed to only have 7, 8 maximum. I spent my entire day doing other people's jobs and giving these customers a basic service they were entitled to. That day, the dealership sold 45 cars. 45 customers I missed out on. Everyone but the one new guy got a sale, and I heard multiple salespeople telling customers about the technology clinic, meaning 2 weeks from then I'd likely have another 35 or more people in my clinic. I waited until I had helped every single customer. They showed up to the clinic. It wasn't their fault, so I didn't take it out on them. When they left, I went to my desk, typed up a letter of resignation, and went to the GM's office. I went to the GM and told him everything I told you. I was going to give him a chance to make it right because frankly, I made a crapload of money there until the clinic. He responded with, "We'll talk to the staff and see what we can do." To which I responded, "No you won't. So here's what I can do." I put the resignation letter on his desk, shook his hand and walked out. The following Tuesday, while leaving a meeting with their biggest competitor, I got a call from the owner of the dealership I just left. He offered me $200 per clinic I had already done, and for every clinic in the future, as well as giving me a written promise to make me a finance manager within 6 months. So I went back. I stayed there for another year and a half, until being a F&I manager had left me completely disillusioned with the car business. Edit. A lot of you seem interested in why I left finance. A couple of reasons. The big one is sometimes you get trapped by your own talent. You're good at something you don't like, and despite being good at a job you could also just not be cut out for it. That was me. So here's another long post for you. One story comes to mind. This is what really broke me. Single mother just getting back on her feet. Had spent the last 2 years fixing her credit to get a reliable car for her and her son. She comes in for an advertised lease deal. New 2014 Honda CR-V for $239 a month plus tax. Only about $500 due at signing. The thing is that about those advertised lease deals is you need to have a credit to get approved for that payment. Lease approvals are different than regular finance deals. Approvals come in tiers. So if you didn't get the approved tier for the $239 deal, the next tier would make the payment $306 or something like that. This single mother agreed to the $239 payment, but got approved for the $306 tier. That sucks for her, but that's the nature of the beast. Her credit, her problem. And there's nothing I can do. So I got break the news to her. She's understandably upset, but I go through her credit report and explain why that may be the case, and assure her that at the end of this lease she will definitely be on the top tier, so long as she pays her bills on time. I close her. She's still happy, and it's all good. I go back to my office to get the paperwork ready and let the finance director know I'm rolling the car. A few minutes later the finance director calls me over. I see that he has a crap-eating grin on his face. He informs me that he made a couple of calls and actually got her bumped to the $239 rate. I'm happy because we got this lady a way better deal until reality sets in. I know what he's about to tell me to do. Something I freaking hate. But I won't have a choice. The lease bump. Basically, since this lady already agreed to a $306 payment. But after the agreement we got her approved for $239. To a piece of crap finance director that means that's $77 a month to play with to pack in product. $77 over 36 months is over $2,500 worth of product. I was expected to then give her a menu presentation, the sheet with all the products, and sell her on products first, and tell her that all of it would only cost her $9 a month and her total payment would be $315. I gave her the worst menu presentation in my entire career, hoping that she would just push the menu back to me like every other lease customer. She didn't. In fact, she basically bought it all. Why? Because she liked me, she trusted me, she believed I had her best interests at heart, and she was wrong. She took the car home and likely never used any of the crap she got outside of the maintenance package. There's a lot of mental gymnastics guys in the car business tell themselves to be able to justify the things some of them do. Yeah. That was still a decent lease payment for a great car. Yeah. Based on her debt to income ratio she could afford it. Yeah. A lot of those products will eventually come in handy. But let's cut the crap. I misled that person. I lied to that person. I stole money from that person. I didn't sleep that night. I did what most car guys do on a Saturday night. I went out and got hammered to dull the shame I had. That hangover the next morning was one of the most illuminating moments in my life. That's when I knew I had to get out and never look back. Worked at Best Buy in high school. Some people from a different store transferred over, and one of them took over scheduling from my supervisor. She gave me a total of 10 hours a week down from my usual 30, 40. I had to save 2 checks just to pay my crappy cheap cricket phone bill with those hours. I complained to my sup about her scheduling, and they raised me to about 15 hours. I couldn't understand why or what I had done to get cut so much. When my birthday came close I reminded her constantly to not schedule me that day, which shouldn't have been a problem considering my crap hours. She told me constantly not to worry. Schedule comes out, and that's the one day I'm scheduled a full 8 hours. I try to contact her, and they tell me she's on vacation and I can't change my schedule. I called to quit that same day. Then later I find out that the manager who I called when I quit had been snuggling money from the store at the moment I called her and was leaving the city. She never told anyone I called to quit. It manager here was working for a company that didn't consider us a real department. Lots of things leading up to this, but the last straw was an announcement that a satellite office was being shut down, and any employees that could would relocate to our office. We, the department, found out about this at the same time as the rest of the company, months after the decision had been made. Nobody told us anything, and this would involve obscene amounts of extra travel, hours, and stress as we accommodate the moves. The infrastructure, and everything else involved with such a move, are left in the middle of the announcement. Follow up, my boss, CFO, threatens me to fire me if I don't do the work. Lol. Can't fire someone who's already quit. Taps temple. Then the CEO calls me and asks me back to negotiate. I agree to come back for 6 months if I get a 25% raise for myself and my entire team. After 6 months, I left and they laid off everyone else. I worked on a farm throughout high school for a very wealthy couple. The husband was a successful commercial real estate agent, and the wife trained dogs to do hunt and field tests. I primarily worked for the wife, assisting in training the dogs, but as it was a farm, I did various things for the husband as well. The husband was a raging alcoholic who would get mad if you wouldn't share a drink with him when offered. When his wife was out of town participating in competitions with the dogs, I would have to drive over to the farm multiple times a day to feed the horses, clean out their stalls, etc, and I would often run into him. But I tried to avoid it when possible, because he made me uncomfortable. Anyway, I was like 17, and it was summer, so I accidentally slept through my 6 AM alarms one morning, and didn't get to the farm until around 8 to feed the horses and clean out their stalls. Not like it mattered. Horses can't tell time. The husband was there and had already been drinking, as I could smell it on him, and he started laying into me about being so late. He told me I was a poor white trash piece of crap, and if my parents let me oversleep for my job, then they are even worse white trash pieces of crap and I won't ever amount to anything just like them. Yada yada. I told him he could take care of the horse crap himself, and that I quit. And as I was leaving, he was yelling at the top of his lungs that he would find me and kill me. I never went back. Back in college, I delivered food. I worked all the time, picked up shifts, and was highly valued. Corporate wanted to have a front staff meeting, and the managers didn't communicate it to the employees. So literally no one showed. I was working at the time of the meeting, so I saw the managers get reamed by Corp. They rescheduled the meeting for the following Saturday morning, which happened to be the day after my birthday, and one of the few days I requested off. I told them I wasn't going to make the meeting, and they got all huffy puffy about how they would have to do something if I didn't come. This happened at the end of my lunch shift and I just said frick it, called a local pizza shop, set up an interview, and didn't show up for my evening shift. They called and were all, we can figure something out, and I said nah, I'm good. I probably cold just toughed it out, because the managers typically only lasted 4 months or so, but I had enough of this dude's crap by then. My aunt got me a job as a tech in a chemical plant. As I was young and stupid, I told the guy who was supposed to train me that I got the job through my aunt. He decided to haze me. After the first shift, I already almost decked him, as he would handily forget to tell me things and would berate and belittle me all the time. The second shift it continued, and while I was working on a pipe, he didn't close it as he was supposed to do. If I hadn't been aware of the rumbling and rolled away, I would have been blasted by a jet of boiling steam. Went to the team leader. He said I was overreacting, but he proposed to move me to another shift. I quit. My aunt was pretty upset with me until she heard, through the rumor mill, that the guy indeed had done what I said he did. I was interning at a human rights nonprofit. I was so happy to be there. However, the people in my specific office were awful. We didn't start until 10, and they would always manage to be late, and I didn't have a key to the office. I got there an hour early because that's how the train time lined up, and I was fine waiting the hour until 10, but they wouldn't get in until 11 some days, or even 12. Did they ever notify me when they were going to be late? No. Did I ask them to? Yes. On my last day, it hit 11, and I asked when someone would be there. They said 11:30. It hit 12 o'clock and I just left the items I had with me outside the door and walked away. I sent an email to them saying I can't deal with this anymore, and they never responded back. I worked for a pharmacy for almost 2 years, and we had hired a second replacement pharmacist who requested a weekend off each month. Well, when the pharmacist took his weekend, they filled his shift with a floating relief pharmacist. Well, there was a particular one. We will call him Jim. Jim had been a pharmacist for 40+ years, and had his own way of doing everything. Long story short, this guy didn't keep up on workplace training, new systems, anything. Instead, he would sit around and work as slowly as possible, and when you asked him for anything, he would pretend he didn't hear you. When the customer would come to pick up their script and it wasn't filled, He would legitimately blame the person he was working with in front of the customer, saying X didn't tell me. I told the main pharmacist, if they schedule me with him again I'm done. They did. I ghosted that company. I was a truck unloader at Walmart. We unloaded freight into skids, sorted by department number. There were 3 of us who were new, doing the best we can, trying to memorize where the department skids are and hauling ass as fast as we could. The store manager came to check in on us and said we weren't going fast enough. To speed us up, he pushed everything that was on rollers onto the floor. I walked over and gave him my badge and knife and left. I worked for a landscaping company that operated more like a MLM scheme. I only worked for them for like a week. They mostly targeted students and immigrants who needed work in the summertime and would take anything, with promises like make your own schedule, make XY an hour, and work outside. They target desperate people, those without proper documentation even, and they paid cash, so everything was under the table, and I'm 100% certain they were not paying taxes. I was stupid enough to go for it when I was 18. Went to the info seminar and instantly got terrible vibes. But I figured, I don't have anything else going on, so why not? The day they pick us up in a cube van, like 15 people crammed in without seat belts, and drive us to a location. Then they give us aeration machines and we go around trying to sell plants and aerating lawns. Basically, whatever you sold, you would get to keep 10% of the money and the company kept the other 90%. You also had to work like a 15-hour day in the hot summer sun. No supervision all day. No bathroom breaks or anything, unless you chose to took them yourself, and you'd have to find a bathroom to use too. Anyway, I did this for a few days and the pay was miserable. Let's say you collect $1,200, well, you get to keep $120. $120/15 hours is $8/HR, and at the time minimum wage was higher than that. Well, sometimes I got a little higher than that, but much of the time it was around minimum wage or lower. The second day we went and showed up, and they drove us to another city an hour away. It was pouring freaking rain all day. Nobody wanted to buy peen, I don't blame them, and nobody wanted their lawn aerated in the pouring rain. So I ended up with like nothing at the end of the day, and it was miserable. The next time I came back, in the morning, we drove out to some suburb. And the guy gives me this talk about how last time I didn't make enough money and I needed to pick up the slack this time. Because these machines are expensive. I'm clearly not trying hard enough, etc. Well, that mad me right off. So that day, I took the aeration machine out and busted my freaking ass. Did my best to sell. Did the aerations where I could. Worked up a sweat. I'd collected $1,800 by the end of the day. At the end of the day, you would wait at a certain spot, and they'd pick you up with the machine, and bring you back to the station, so you could deliver the money, and get your cut. So, instead of going to the pickup spot, I went to the grocery store, and bought a bag of sugar, and poured it in the gas tank of the aeration machine, and left it by the side of the road. Then I took the bus home, and pocketed all the money. I ignored all their phone calls, and eventually they stopped calling. They never took identification or social insurance numbers or anything, so they had no real proof I even worked for them in the first place. This was about 10 years ago now, and my only regret is that I didn't do that the first day. I got in trouble for going to the bathroom. I worked at a call center. It was an emergency, and I followed protocol. Finished my call as best as I could, wrote in the team chat that I would be switching to busy, put my phone on busy, and ran to the washroom, which was on the other side of the building. Seriously, one washroom for a building of like 1,500 employees and you literally have to walk like 1 kilometer to get to it. I took like 5-10 minute tops. I can't emphasize enough what an emergency code brown situation this was, and when I got back, put my phone back on, and got back in, I was reamed out in front of the entire calling floor, easily 300 people on my contract, because I couldn't wait the extra 2h for my assigned 15-minute break. Next day I was resolved to quit without any notice. Talked 2 hours, my supervisor, and told them that today would be my last day and I'm out. I was 18 years old. I took a year off between high school and university to work and save money. Had a part-time job at a self-serve gas station to earn a little spending cash as almost all of my full-time job money was going to university savings. New assistant manager started. Instantly had a hate on for me and treated me like a lazy sob because I had arranged with the past assistant manager, the mom of one of my school friends, to work 2 slower weeknights roughly 10 hours per week. Every time I talked to the new assistant manager she tried to pressure me into taking shifts that interfered with my full-time job. And she started saying that I wasn't a team player, it wasn't fair, that the manager wouldn't change the shifts I'd agreed to, I needed to take more hours, etc. 2 months after new assistant manager started I got in a car crash. It wasn't my fault. I T-boned a lady who ran a red light, and the lady barely managed to get her car to the local police station where she filed a false police report stating that I ran that red light. While I'm at the police station, new assistant manager calls to ask me if I can come in 2 hours early. Aka 45 minutes from the time she called. I apologized, said no, sorry, I can only come in for my regular start time. Assistant manager freaks out. Apparently everyone I work with says I'm lazy. I don't care about my job. I never do anything to help anyone out. I'm self-centered. She works hard, but I don't appreciate her. On and on like that, until I hang up on her. I show up at work 5 minutes before my regular time. Storming in the customer entrance, rather than the employee entrance. Slam my key on the counter in front of a couple customers. Tell her I was in a bad not at fault accident, and when she called I was trying to resolve the false police report that was filed about me, and that I refused to work another minute for that company as long as she was an assistant manager there. Assistant manager has a wide-eyed look and attempts to say something as I walk out the door and never return. Worked at a rental car agency for about 9 months. Dealt with nasty customers 24/7 who would demean me, cuss me out, or sob. It was exhausting. One day, a customer gets upset we don't have a specific make/model of sub for him, even though size is the only promised vehicle spec for a reservation, and he spits on me, right in my face. My manager escorted him out of the building, but didn't say a word to me, clocked out and never looked back. When I was in between jobs I applied to work a construction job that needed harness trained people. I was just coming off working as a solar installer, so I figured I'd give it a shot. First day on the job they take me up to the top of their scaffolding section to clamp down beams. No biggie. I ask where their walkboards or scaffolding walks are for this floor, because all the other floors have walkways, whereas this one is just 1-inch beam. 3-foot gap, 1-inch beam all the way across, 100+ feet in the air. They tell me they don't have any. Okay, I'll deal. After a few hours of grueling work I depleted my gallon jug of water and was getting dizzy. I called down to the elevator operator to bring me down. Without missing a beat he shouts climb and walks off to smoke a cigarette. I climbed down all 14 or so stories on angled beams with no harness, while bordering on heat exhaustion. Walked up to the foreman, told him he was going to kill someone and it wasn't going to be me, and left. I worked at Best Buy in the mid-zeros. I started as a cashier and eventually made my way to the customer service booth, which was something you had to earn. One day, it was a bit busier than usual and I was in the booth with another girl who was a notorious lazy crap. The boss asked her to jump on a register to clear out a line and she said no. So, the boss asked me and I said no also because I was already given another task. The next day, they pulled me into the office and told me I was demoted because of it. I walked right to my locker, grabbed my stuff, and left. Turns out the girl was banging the boss and that's why she was allowed to say no, but I couldn't. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can watch together.